Where are you from?
I'm from Metlakatla, Alaska. That's in southeast Alaska, just south of Ketchikan, village.
How long have you been an artist?
Since puberty, I think. Quite a while. Been a professional artist in 40 years. Plus 40 years.
40 years?
But I've been drawing since fifth grade.
What types of art do you create, David?
Well, I guess you could call it Northwest Coast art, Xinjiang art. Xinjiang is my tribe, but I do that style of art, but it's from the north. You think of the Northwest Coast, Southeast Alaska, and British Columbia, and Puget Sound. The art varies and drastically different as you go to those different regions. So I do northern style, Northwest Coast art.
I looked at your website and I saw you basically do form line design. Is that your main motif that you use in your art?
Form line design is a very old and intricate and important part of everything that we make, whether it's totem poles, masks, boxes, panels, rattles, bowls, all that stuff. Northern form line art, it's on everything. It tells people who you are, what clan you are. It just helps to tell the stories too.
And do you consider yourself a traditional or a contemporary artist, and what makes that distinction for you?
I'm a traditional artist in a contemporary setting, I guess you could say. I want my work to look like it was made in the 1800s, and I'm very adamant about that, and I work very hard and study the old pieces and that, but we live in a modern world and have to sometimes have to adapt things, but for the most part, I'm pretty strict about what I make and how I make it and what I want it to look like.
So do you use like modern tools, or do you craft your own? Maybe speak of another time before they had power tools?
No, I use power tools. But all of my traditional tools, my knives and adzes, they're all exactly the same as they were back in the old days, except that the steel, the metal is a better grade. But all of the hand tools that I make are all really the same as what the old people used. But using power tools makes sense because it lessens the time to make something, especially in the rough out stages when you've got a big block of wood or a big log or something. Take months longer to carve a totem pole if you didn't use a power or a chainsaw to take wood away that you don't need. You don't carve with it. There are people who carve with a chainsaw. You see those on the roadsides and then at fairs and things like that, but that's not at all what people like me do.
Yeah, I can see where that would be a time saver. Some of the totem poles, they're 24 feet high. Is that the average?
That's kind of a middle to small. Yeah. People, my biggest ones are over 40 feet, but other guys made bigger ones.
And what materials do you use? Do you gather traditional materials?
Mostly I carve in old growth Western red cedar, and I use alder too, so hardwood. Depends on what I'm making. Western red cedar and yellow cedar, and some people call it white cedar. And then alder, some people use maple too, but I don't get maple too much. I use alder for masks and rattles, bowls, things like that. Cedar for totem poles, bed boxes and panels, things like that.
Yeah, and I saw your bent boxes as well, bentwood boxes. And do you steam them like they would have in the old days, or do you have a more modern twist on how you get the wood to bend?
They're steam, but I use propane, and it makes really hot steam time. But what they call a crab cooker just produces a lot of heat. And then I have my own system with steam box and things like that. In the old days, they would dig a hole put seaweed and hot rocks, put water on them. But that's a pretty slow process. If you want it to be very hot, the hotter the steam, the cleaner the bed.
Are there any events that have happened in your lifetime that were responsible for influencing your artistic style?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I've been very instrumental in the renewal and revival of my culture, especially in my village, and among my people here in the city too, in Alaska and here in Seattle. And the opportunity to pass on knowledge and teach dancing and singing and carving and things like that all came along at a time when I was just getting going as a working artist. So it really that all those things dovetailed. My progress as an artist dovetailed with my opportunity to help my own people revive our culture. So in 1982, I gave the very first launch in 100 years in my village, raised the first totem pole, and all that stuff was kind of the kickoff for the beginning of that revival, and also put a big shot into what I was trying to do too. That had produced a lot of things that people were using for singing and dancing and ceremonies, as well as selling my art on the commercial market.
Yeah, I also saw on your website that you have a dance troupe as well, and you teach your native language.
Yeah, I've been a leader of a couple of different dance groups, but the group that I have now has existed since 1996, and we've traveled to Europe and through Canada, all the major national festivals in the U.S. We're going to Juneau this June for a biannual celebration. They call it celebration. It's a gathering of over 50 dance groups gathered every 2 years in Juneau, and we're practicing now, getting ready for that. 2 years ago, we were the lead group. What that means really is that you sing for an hour and a half with a couple thousand dancers that do the grand entry, and then at the end of the 4 days, you sing them out again. But it's quite a celebration. There's a lot going on there. It's quite a fun gathering. And as for the language, I've been worried about language for years. It's a very threatened language. Very few people speak it anymore. Been trying my best over the years. I'm not fluent. I'm more what they call a functional speaker. And but my oldest son has moved back to my village, and with his little organization, his little foundation, three of his friends, they're working on a daily basis with the very few elders that speak that are left, working on that, trying to learn as much as they can so they can teach the next generation. But it's a very scary thing. It's a very scary thing. Most of those folks, every time an elder dies, it gets closer and closer to being gone. But with their help or with their work, I'm hoping that it's not going to happen too soon.
That would be a shame to lose that.
It's terrible. It's not our fault either. Our people were punished. My mother's generation, they were punished, physically punished for speaking and using their language. Discouraged from doing that. So it's a shame.
So why did you decide to pursue art originally? Is it something you just started doing, or did you have intentions of bringing the culture back to your village?
I never thought about that when I was starting. I just always really liked what I saw as our art, I just went to a hardware store and bought myself a set of X-Acto tools, very untraditional tools, and I went to a lumber yard, bought a few pieces of cedar and pine, and I looked at some bookstores, found some books with old pictures of totem poles. Not my tribe. I really didn't know who to ask. I didn't know there were people that I could go to learn from or anything. I just started making a pile of chips, got copying old model poles, which is a kind of a backwards way to do it. You should learn design first before you do any sculpture. But at that time, that's the only way I knew. And I'm, for the most part, self-taught. I had a total of about 3 months in the early 80s from 2 different established artists, a month here, a couple months there. But for the most part, I just went into museums and looked at old pieces and, like I said, made a pile of chips, practice. It's not, I don't recommend that. I wish that I had extended apprenticeships with 2 or 3 or more different artists. The guys who are starting now have much more available to them in terms of established native artists who they can learn from. I did it, but in the meantime, the good thing about it, I guess, it was a struggle for me, but I established an individual style that people recognize. So, and my work is well thought of, but it took years to get to that point.
So basically, you're self-taught. Have you ever studied with anybody else as far as taking a class here and there, or just completely on your own?
Well, like I said, I worked with a non-native artist for 2 months down here in the Seattle area, and then before that, I spent about a month altogether with a native artist in my village. Took 2 or 3 classes, but they were very short, and so altogether, in 40 years, at the very beginning, I did about 3 months instruction. It's all, just study and hard work and, research and, that kind of stuff.
So you did a lot of researching on the style of the people where you came from?
Yes, yeah, eventually, that's what I focused on for most of my career. When I first started, though, I was copying, Clicker and Hyder, totem poles, and copying designs out of books and things like that, but eventually just went away from that and just tried to go to as many museums and look at their collections as possible, and those are the guys, those old, quiet, ancient guys that, taught me through just studying their work, and eventually I moved closer and closer and closer to traditional old Simpson style, and that's what I hope I produce now. So,
What does your art mean to you?
It's a really strong connection for me to the old people, and it's given me the opportunity to affect people and with singing and dancing, and because the art is connected to that, designing dance regalia signs on there, right on regalia say who we are, what clan we are, what family we belong to, making masks and drums and rattles, things that are used, the headdresses that are used for ceremonies, song and dance among my own people. It's really been a big way for me to contribute in a positive way to this really amazing revival that's happened over the last 30, 40 years. And I feel pretty fortunate that I'm able to pass it on to a new generation. It's kind of satisfying.
What is your favorite piece that you've worked on, or your greatest accomplishment?
Well, I'm known for totem poles. I've made 70. I'm going to be starting my 79th totem pole in June. And my favorite of those are the 1994. I did a 30-foot totem pole that honored my grandfather who raised me. I was raised by my grandmother and grandfather in our village. My second favorite, I think, is just a recent totem pole that my son and I did together to honor my recently passed sister-in-law, my wife's sister, down here in Seattle. And that's at a hospital here in Seattle where she was treated. And I think my third favorite one is the museum, the totem pole I did for the Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. The reason that's one of my favorites is because we've got a lot of press and a lot of media for that, and the live stream camera on us on the computer watching us carve the last 2 weeks of the carving. We finished at the museum, and a couple of children's classes, elementary school classes in my village had the opportunity to watch us the whole 2 weeks finish the bowl, and they would text my son times a day and ask us to wave, and they'd wave back at the monitors in their little classrooms, and that was really fun. I knew that our people in my village were watching us, and were very proud that we were doing that. And the name of my village and the name of my tribe for a couple of weeks was went around the world in the cloud, I guess you could call it. So that was pretty satisfying. And the other one that really, I think, is once in a lifetime, really means a lot to me, as my son and I did a large, fully carved and painted house front that's in the building in Juneau. And that took us 6 months to do. It's quite beautiful. You should look it up. It's called the Sobolov Center. It's Alaska Heritage Institute in Juneau. But that's a one of a kind. It's the only one that exists that carved and painted in the largest house front, I think, that exists in modern days. And then, like I said before, all of the pieces that I've made for Native dancers and for ceremonies and for people to wear at real important cultural occasions, those are pretty important to me. And of course, all the stuff I've made for my dance group too. We've become very well known as a mask dancing storytelling group. So.
Do you think it's okay for non-natives to learn and practice traditional Native art?
Well, that's a really touchy subject. I'm pretty set on what side of that controversy I'm on. I know people, and I consider some friends that are not native who make art. My opinion, without being too hard, is it's a free country, and people can have hobbies and take classes and learn how to make art from different cultures. People do that all the time. Where I have a problem with it is where, especially in the Seattle area, it's a big deal. There are a few artists who make and sell their work to galleries. There are at least one major gallery that focuses their attention on native or non-native artists. And then there are people who collect art from non-native artists. I'm sure that they're artists. They're good artists, but this is our art. My people belongs to my people, and it hurts me to see that sometimes because I know what my mom and my uncles and those that went through were punished for being native. So that's my opinion. Selling our art, I don't agree with that.
How do you think colonization has affected Native art?
That word, colonization and decolonization, I have some objections to that word, or those words, but so many years have passed now since the days of when, and it has really, some of it has changed, prejudice, acculturation, and all that stuff still exists, but so many years have gone by, there was huge disease epidemics and laws passed, and those things really decimated our people and put us on a different path by the people who came into this area, non-native people, and wanted us to be good colonized people, I suppose. Because of those, so many people died with all of that, and then they were sent off to schools, and there was a big loss of knowledge. and then people being forced from young age to give that stuff up and actually be ashamed of it. But in modern days, since the 50s and 60s and even more in the 70s and 80s, there's a big revival by tribes up and down the northwest coast. The Salish people in Puget Sound area had this canoe culture that's had a huge revival where they have every summer they have these big gatherings of canoe tribes paddling to different villages and having big celebrations. And then as you go further north, dozens of dance groups that have been formed and language revival of language, and each tribe now has multiple carvers that are producing bowls and masks to go along with all the revival of that the culture. And we're trying. We relearn what can be learned. There's not the old days. One of the things that about decolonization or fighting colonization, whatever, is we really can't go back to 1800. It's impossible. There's not a native I know that would give up electricity, and automobiles, things like that. But we have to balance that with trying our best to respect our culture, respect our the way we are, who we are, without losing it. Our language is a really big part of that, and it's just severely threatened. I mean, my language, the people